I am here with another phenomenal woman. Her resume and the things she has done is extensive, not just in her professional life, but what she has done in the community. And she has helped people of all ages, from children to adults. If I was to name everything, it would not give her justice. I am honored, and we are honored to have her today on my platform. And right now, I allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sheila Henry, lifelong resident of Springfield, and real estate professional, business entrepreneur, visionary, mother, uh, daughter, grandmother,
We're going to talk about all those
all
today.
those things.
Yes, ma'am. As a highly respected member of the community and successful business owner, could you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to start your business journey?
Well, my background, of course, I'm a lifelong resident of Springfield, and in retrospect, looking at it, years ago, they used to have community organized efforts. My first experience was with Neighborhood Youth Corps with Selena Singletary and Tom Donnellan. They ran that program. And at 15 years old, they entered us into job markets during the summertime. It was summertime work programs. And so we got to experience, as young people, we got a taste of the job market and what things that we weren't exposed to ordinarily. And so those are my earliest foundations for thinking about the future, about a career path, and what it is I wanted to do. And it was a group of us girls, just a group of us girls in our neighborhood who were able to participate in those ventures. So started with Neighborhood Youth Corps, went on to go into OIC. When OIC got here, that was big for us. They got us into places, and that was as young adults, they got us into places we wouldn't have been able to enter into. So when I worked with OIC, I was, that's how I got exposed to the courthouse. I had gotten a job with OIC through the courthouse. I worked in manufacturing, so I had got to see some things, clerical manufacturing at that time. Later on, I went to Honda and did physical manufacturing work. But just being able to be exposed to those places and things, that was what really kind of implanted different things in me.
Yes, ma'am. As the Springfield Municipal Court Clerk, you implemented several initiatives that positively impacted the community. Could you please share some of those key contributions or improvements you made during your tenure?
As the municipal court clerk, that of course was my dream job. So because I worked as a clerk in common pleas court when I was like 19 or 20. So that gave me exposure to the court system. So when I got to be municipal court clerk, the first thing I saw was there was no diversity in the clerk's office. People are there every day doing tickets, evictions. It's a very kind of emotional driven type atmosphere. So the first thing I did, I employed people who looked like me, who looked like other people, I diversified the office. Because what was important was most of the time people in that had to come up there, sometimes it was shame. So a lot of times it was fear, just not knowing what to expect. And I was very familiar with the need for emotional safety. You can go some places and it's not about just physical safety.
Right.
You need to feel emotionally safe. So one of the first things I implemented in the municipal court's office was diversity. Second, which was big for me, I opened up the ability for people to pay their tickets online. I mean, not just online, but by phone. Because we're an aging population in Clark County. So we're getting more older people than we're getting younger people. So a lot of people do not like, they're technically challenged like I am. I just I don't have the mindset to want to learn more about the computers than I have to. So we opened up the ability for people to be able to call and pay for their tickets and get some direction by phone. Again, just the representation, listing my personal phone number in the event that you had any complaints or that you didn't feel like you were being treated fair. Try to make it smoother where you worked with one clerk throughout your whole process. Now, I'm not clerk now, so a lot of those things have reverted back to the old ways, but I just tried to make the process simpler.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. As a real estate professional, what do you think are some of the most common misconceptions people have about the real estate market? And what key insights or trends should buyers and sellers be aware of in today's market?
Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions I see as a realtor is that when you're in a position and you have to engage a realtor, trust a realtor. Because one of the biggest obstacles I think we have as realtors is when we're telling you what the market says your property is going to value at or sell out, is you believe in that. Because people look at TV and a house sells itself. And when it sits on the market too long, it's either the price or the house. Trust your realtor. We work for you, so we don't press people into, we don't press people into sales. The other thing is, a lot of people don't have vision. So when you go look at real estate, you don't really, it might not look perfect to you, but you can make it perfect. And probably 80% of the times, people go in and change a house anyway. Even if when they look at it, it's what they want. As soon as they go in, they start making changes that they would have been able to get a house in the same location, same style. But because they didn't have that vision of what it could be when they first looked at it. And the market is up and down. Today, I can list a house and have no problem selling it within a couple weeks. But sometimes just what's going on in the world changes it, and it might take a couple months. Trust your realtor. Feel good. Feel good about who you choose. Feel good about who you choose. And if you're just young, starting off, when I first started selling real estate, I sold to young guys. And I sold to them because sometimes they didn't have direction in their life, but they had money. And at that time, you could buy a house in Springfield for $5,000 or $10,000. And like I said, one of my first line of serving people was the young guys, because they could buy houses for $5,000 and $10,000, which was nothing to them. Sat on them, but then they start engaging people to fix them, to do trade work. And as it turned out, look at the real estate market, how rentals, they started out with rentals. And sometimes so people led, I should say, challenging lives, they didn't walk away with nothing. They had something to lead to come back to. So always be on the lookout for those opportunities. Land banks, where you can get properties for cheap. Tax sales, you can get properties for cheap. And remember, your first home doesn't have to be your forever home. You'll keep obtaining more and more and more. Then when you get older, you realize, well, can't take it with me, and you might go back. You might start sliding back downwards. You reach for the sky at first, and then you start thinking about reality of it all. So with real estate, just trust your realtor. Just trust them.
Yes, ma'am. You are someone who feels very strongly about the value of education. Could you speak to young people about why education is important?
Most important reason why education is important, and I want to say I'm not an educated person as far as I didn't go to college. I was a teenage mom. But the most important thing about education is you work smarter. You don't work hard. I feel like the things I've done, I've had to work hard because I just didn't have the education. So proud that my kids all have went the route of education. But if you want to work smart, get your education. You can make it without it, because one thing I will tell you that's more important than the education, smarter or harder, is an ethic. Have a work ethic.
Yes, ma'am.
Go to work. When you get to work. I never would have envisioned when I got a job at the courthouse as a file clerk. And literally, a file clerk, and we didn't have the computers and things then. We had paperwork. So every day I had the task of filing stacks and stacks of papers. And I can remember at the time Ron Vincent was the clerk of courts. And he told me after a month, he said, I can't let you sit back here and file all these papers. You keep this desk too clean. He moved me up to another job. And that's what really started my whole love of the court system and things like that. So I always tell people, have a work ethic. You know, so education and that work ethic. Commit yourself to your job.
Yes, ma'am. Could you share your perspective on what motherhood and grandmotherhood means to you and discuss the significance it holds in your life?
Wow. Motherhood. I started out with motherhood at such a young age. I was just 18 when I started motherhood. And you tend to put in your children what you want, you know, and I wanted my daughter at that time I wanted her to be and do the things right that I did wrong. So you put a lot into it. As you grow into motherhood and have more and more kids, you realize you relax a lot of your standards. You kind of count on that first child to set the standards for everybody, and they do. Grandmotherhood, totally different because you just, I mean, it's a miracle. You're watching something that really came from you, even though you didn't have to have the natural birth of it all. And it's just totally different. It is definitely, definitely more rewarding in some ways. It's the results without the stress of raising them, you know.
Yes,
so
yes, ma'am.
yeah, so motherhood is most important. And you have to learn that when you're having children, you really have to change your priorities. Time flies by quick. You'll have a future ahead of you. You'll have time to live your life, but don't think that you're giving up everything to raise children, because time flies. It's like one day you're stressing about how you're going to do school clothes, Christmas, Easter, all that, and next thing you know, it's over, and you are looking at grandkids. So prioritize your life and enjoy your children.
Yes, ma'am. Could you share your perspective on how young women can recognize and embrace their value and self-worth?
Well, I think that the way that you really can do it, it's really not your physical. And I mean, I know a lot of young people put a lot into their physical. It's just a sense of self-pride. I can't really tell them how to get it, but you'll know when you reach that, because you're focused on you. We all go through I think what's been established as success is married, kids, picket fence, you know, and that's kind of in the background now, not as much as it was when I was growing up. But there's so much value you can get just out of your work, whatever your career path is probably, if you're young, that's where you're going to get your first, I think, your boost of value. If you go to work and you are committed to your job, you'll get a sense of who you are by the way you're rewarded where you work. And your reward might not be money. It'll just be, you'll see the confidence they'll put in you to do other tasks greater than maybe what you was employed to do. And looking back, I think that's where I established a sense of value. No matter where I worked at, and I've had many jobs. I've had many jobs, but no matter where I worked at, I always excelled. But I always tried to, because again, I didn't go to college, and I thought that, okay, this is going to be my life. My life is just going to be working. And for me to get accolades or, you know, feel good about myself, it was really on my job. As a mother, I was hoping I was doing the right things, but I didn't really know. But as I worked in different careers, many careers. I wish I could. Sears and Roebuck. I used to sell pantyhose and watch batteries. I was probably just 19. But just an example of jobs I did. I started out part-time. I worked a full-time job, but part-time I went to Sears and selling pantyhose and watch batteries. And the store manager came to me one day and he said, you know, I watch how you interact with people. And you're always here. You're always always doing. And he said, I want you to try a commission sales job, which I had no idea what it was. And he moved me up into TVs and stereos, which made me quit my full-time job, because at times at 20, I made $1,000 a day between November and January the 1st selling commission sales. Robinson Meyer, I worked in production clerical work. I just was doing regular clerical stuff, but they saw my consistency. And so I ended up being the youngest union steward elected to represent the clerical union because of the way I worked. And the value of being a union steward was, no matter how many layoffs came, you always had super seniority, they called it. And it was just over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Honda, I worked, and I ended up leaving Honda because physically it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did leave, they called me and asked me would I consider coming back. They thought I had so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to go back. But I went back to the courthouse. And in the courthouse, I ended up from that file clerk. I was for common pleas court, which is your higher court. It handles the felonies and things. I ended up being the supervisor over the criminal and the court of appeals division.
Mm-hmm.
So always just, I think your value comes from how you commit yourself to what you're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't get that in a relationship, because in a relationship, you're giving.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be giving.
Mm-hmm.
But there's those times you just need to know who you are. You
right.
learn what you're worth.
Yes, ma'am.
So just work hard. Just be committed to do something, whether it's volunteer work. Even in that, you can get a sense of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. You are a woman of faith. Can you share how God has carried you through your trials and tribulations in your life?
So many trials and tribulations. It looks easy. Faith is what carries you through. The greatest thing about faith, for me, I would tell anybody, and you don't have to be a person of faith to be a giver, but learn to be a giver. Learn to be a giver.
Okay.
And you'll be blessed. But
yes,
faith, I couldn't live without it. I have a lot of trials going through in my life. Still do. But you wake up and you're grateful you survived them. You just wake up. It's faith.
Yes, ma'am. Is there anything else you would like to share with the listening audience before we go?
Now, just, be grateful for your life, because one thing I heard Michelle Obama say this week, she talked about her mother getting older. And she said her mother used to always say, well, you get old, people need to move on when they get older, because the world needs to make room. Now, this isn't quote for quote. This is just my interpretation of what I heard her say. But she said, the older people have to make room for younger people. But she said when her mother got real sick, she said her mother said one day, that was quick. And she said, what was quick, Mom? She said, life. And I've held on to that this whole week, because it's quick. Live your life with no regrets. Live your life knowing you did the best you can, and that you gave when you could, that you lifted up people when you could. Stay around positive people. We all fall into negative activity, but be intentional about the company you keep. If you're around negative people, you don't feel good. Be intentional about being around people who talk up, not down.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. This will not be the last time we hear from Miss Sheila. If you have not been to the Browns Cafe, you need to get here. Until next time, peace.
Zucchini bread.
Zucchini bread.